So even if your average ticket, value looks fine, you might still have a hidden problem, right? It could be a rep, it could be a system type, it could be a lead source, it could be a lot of different things. And so in this video, I want to show you how to break all this stuff down and to easily be able to see those trends. And also, we're going to build a little pivot table here and then be able to have filters, quick slicers that just gives you a very fast sort of way to slice and dice your data based on equipment tier, based on territory, lead source, sales rep. So it's pretty useful to be able to use these types of things. So let's get started. So we have a data set here, and this is a very in-depth data set. And so you might not have something that looks exactly like this, but if you have something where you have, say, if you wanted to slice on territory, then you would need territory, you would need lead source, you would need sales rep here, and then also, did you close the deal versus did you not close the deal? And so the only formulas we have to do, which we're doing way out here to the right, is the month and the year of when you sold, of when the deal was sold. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have here a timestamp for sold, which is right here. So sold timestamp. So it's pretty straightforward. If there's a value here, which will be a date and a time, then it means you sold the deal, right? And if there wasn't, if it's blank, then it means it wasn't sold. And so the first thing we need to do for the sold month is, I'll just do the formula again, equals if, and then go all the way over here to sold timestamp. If this equals blank, then blank. Otherwise, we want the text function of this, comma, and then quotations and 4 ends. And that's going to give us, we need to add another bracket here. That's going to give us the month, right? So we have that here. And then for the year, so we'll do just a year. It'll be called year. Yeah, year is fine. So it's the exact same formula. Actually, it's so similar that I'll just copy this and paste this. But instead of M for the month, I'll do 4Ys for the year. And so you can see like this was essentially recreated. So you can do that. And then I'll just delete this because we don't need it for the formulas because we already have it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to get a list of all of those months and years. So a unique list. So what we'll do is we want unique, and then we want unique of these two columns. So you can just highlight the two columns, make sure it's these two. And again, to get this file, there's a download link in the description. And so we just want a unique of these two. And then you can see it's already in chronological order: October, November, December 2025, and then January all the way through, and then January. Again, this is dummy data, so some of this stuff's in the future. So now I want to copy this, Control C, and then Control Shift V because I want to remove the formula. And so that part is done. Let me just center everything here. So now we have month and we have year. And so we got the first two parts done. And then we want the number of jobs sold. And the way we do that is we need to look for the sold month, make sure it's October, and then make sure the year in the sold year is this year. And because there's only data here, if it's sold, then everything here is a sale, right? So the blanks means it wasn't sold. That row, this lead here was not sold. And so it's pretty straightforward to do that. What I'll do is I'll just copy these columns just to save a couple seconds. But you can just, of course, type that in. Date, job sold, and then average sold job value. So from here, we just want to do equals this and quotation space dash space quotations and year. And this is to make the chart whenever we do the chart. Then double click that down. So now essentially what we want to do is we want to count the number of times, the word October is in this column and the year 2025 is in this column. In the same row, October and the year. And then do the same for November, December, January. So equals COUNTFS data. So the sold month, comma, we want that to equal this, comma, and then here for the sold year, comma, starting point, well, it's going to be up here, but you can just type in C4 and then close your brackets and you have that number. And then you can just double click here and everything will automatically update. And so now for the average sold value, what we're going to be doing is we need to find the sold job value. So it's right here. Right? And so because this is only sales, we're good. So we need to find the average of this if it's October and 2025. So essentially for all these October 2025s, we want to sum this column and then divide it by the count, which is the average, right? So equals average if S, and the first criteria is the range, the average range, which is here, the sold job value, comma, and then we want the sold month, comma, and then the sold year, comma, and then, again, Excel gets in the way, but it's cell C4. And so we have that. So press Control-Shift-5 to make it a dollar value. And then you can just double click and it all sort of, drags down. So now what we want to do is we want to create this chart here, and the columns are going to be the number of jobs sold, and the line is going to be the dollar amount or the average job value. So just highlight these three, just like this. So just click and drag down, and then insert recommended charts. And you'll see, like, we don't see what we want here. And the reason is because we need this blue line to be a secondary axis and columns, meaning we don't want the value of 32 on the same axis that we have 8,000. Like, it doesn't make sense. It'll look like this, exactly like this. So it'll just be a flat line. So go to all charts, go to combo, and then for clustered column, we can do a secondary axis. And now we have the line, which is on the y-axis, and then the columns on a secondary axis. Then you can just click OK. Make it a little bit bigger. And then if you want values on any of this, you can just click. I mean, you could click in the chart, go here, go data labels, but it gets too noisy. And so if you want just a specific one, say the line, then just click on the line and click on data labels. And then of course you can make this, bigger. You can make it white, you can make it bold. And if you want to drag it, like move anything, all you have to do is just click it and then, drag it out of the way. And so you can do that for all of them. But yeah, so this is how you can create the first chart, which is, average sold job value, average deal size, like however you want to call it, say by month. Okay, so that's sort of the first part. That's this top section here. And then the next thing we want to do is create 2 pivot tables, create a pivot chart, and create 3 slicers. And so the way we do that is you can just click anywhere in the data here, and then go to Insert, and then Pivot Table, from Table Range, and then we want an existing worksheet, say starting point, let's just say here, and then click OK. And now you have sort of the shell of this. And then what we're going to want is on the columns, we're going to want the sales rep. For the values, we want the average of the sold value. And then on the top here, we want the system type, right? The system type. So pretty straightforward. Click inside here to where you see the pivot table fields pull up. And then the first thing we want, I mean, you can pick, however you want to do it. But if you type in here, you can see sales rep, and we wanted that one on the columns. Sorry, the rows. So we have that. And then for the values, if you remember from the other column, you can just type in sold, and we want sold job value here. But we don't, this is summing everything. We don't want the sum, we want the average. So if you click the little drop down here, value field settings, and then click average. And then you have the average. Let's just make it a $sign. And you can remove the decimals if you want and say center it. Okay, so this is good. This is just, Alex, or, average by Alex, average of Casey Johnson, so on and so forth. But across the top, what we want is we want the system type or the system group. So you can just, again, you can scroll down until you find it. Also, if you don't have a lot of fields and you don't want to type, this is matching the columns. So like column 1 is opportunity, column 2 is lead. But if you want this to be alphabetical, then you can just sort A to Z, and then you get that here. And so what we're wanting is we're wanting the system type or the system group as the columns. And so we have that here. And again, you can filter this on any of these columns. So like you can just pick, again, your data, depends on what you have, but you could have the column headings as any of these. So I'm just showing you these two. And so we have that. And so now what we're going to need is you can just copy this and then you can paste it here, because what this is telling you here, this is the count of what was done. And what we want is we want the slicer to be able to filter on both of these. And so the way and then the reasoning is that if this is less than a certain number, the conditional formatting, and I'll show you how to do that, say less than 8 or 10, then maybe this isn't as worrisome. So like this is still pretty high, but say there's a low value, something like this, it's blank, and they only had 3, right? So it's not enough to take the average, to be worried about it, because there's not enough data. Or maybe that doesn't matter to you, right? And so what you could do is just remove this section here to where you don't really care if they've only done 1 or 2 of those, if they only had that many opportunities. Okay, so the next thing we want here, just to change this, is we don't want the sold value. What we want is we want the opportunities, meaning how many opportunities did they have versus, where's opportunity at? Versus how many they closed. And so let me see. Right, so opportunity ID. So in other words, this is the number of opportunities, and then this is, the average deal size, meaning if they only had 2 or 3 or 4 opportunities and they didn't close any of those, then it might not be something you want to look into, but maybe not. I'm just showing you a different way to look at it. So essentially here, we want to remove this. You can just click and drag it out, but we want to keep opportunity ID here in the values, but we don't, so you can see we don't want the $sign. We want the count. See how it says count of opportunity ID? That's exactly what we want. And you can just highlight this, press Control-Shift-1. Like that's fine. Let me see something real quick. Yeah, so it has the total as well. And then you can just remove this here. And then also, you see on the right-hand side, it's not grand total. So if you don't want the grand total, like this here, or at the bottom, then you can just right-click, and then you could say remove, right-click on grand total, remove grand total. Right-click on grand total, remove grand total. And so that's gone for that. If you still want it at the bottom, which is fine, then we'll just leave that there. And then finally, a couple more things. The next thing you might want is you might want to have conditional formatting on this. So just highlight that range, go to Home, Conditional Formatting, Color Scales, and then high is green, and then low is red. But the thing is that if you do it this way, it doesn't really make much sense because ductless is less than full system, right? So full system is always going to be green. So what's better is to do it at the system type or the system group level, meaning you want to see who's high and low between the salespeople. So I'll show you conditional formatting, color scales, green is high, right? So you have 8346 versus 6976, and this is a better way to look at it. So now just do that 3 more times, or if you click the conditional for the format painter, highlight this, double click the format painter, and then just click the first value in each one, and then press escape. And now you can see, okay, 10532 versus 9698. And then here, if you want to do conditional formatting, say less than, and you can just pick a value, what makes sense to you. So I'm just going to use 8, and you'll see why. It's like, okay, well, none of these are 8. And it's like, yeah, because we haven't used all the filters yet. And then you can just, custom format, pick something that makes sense to you. We'll just use this one. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a pivot chart. And so we want the pivot chart to be off of this. So click inside here anywhere, and then go to Insert, and then we're going to want over here pivot chart. And then you can see here that this is sort of what we're wanting. And then you have the 4 types by person. So then let's just remove all these little silver buttons here. So if you click on the pivot table and then you go to pivot chart analyze and then field list, no, sorry, field buttons and then hide all. And then all that stuff is gone. And so this is a really, useful way of looking at things, but the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add slicers. And so the way you add a slicer is you just click in the data set, go to insert, and then click on slicer here. And then you can pick what you're wanting to slice on. So let's choose, what did we have before? I think we had rep. So let's see, sales rep. Then we had territory here, and then we can do, was it system type? I think it was lead source. Lead source. Click on this. Yeah. Okay, let me just drag these over here, and then I'll show you how to properly sort of use these here. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is that this is only filtering the top one, and there's a way to fix that. And then real quick, sales rep was not one of the fields we wanted. What we want is we want the equipment tier. So again, I'll click in here, insert slicer here, and then go to equipment tier. Okay, and now we have this. And you'll see again, this is not filtering the bottom one. So what we have to do is you have to go into each slicer. So it's a little bit cumbersome, but you just click on the slicer. You see the slicer tab up here and then report connections, and you can see it's only filtering this one pivot table, which is 25. And 5 and 6 is on the completed solutions tab, so we don't want that. So we want it to also filter pivot table 26. And so now you'll see that this one is filtering the bottom, and that's why we did less than 8. But here, this is not. So you have to go back, you have to do it for each one. And it really just takes just a second. Report connections, yes. And then one last time, report connections, yes. Okay, so that is essentially how you can do this. And so you can easily sort of see all the different equipment tiers. You can do it on territory, and the blank cells means that like nothing was done. Like there were no sold jobs. And you can see that this is just a 1 here. So there was one opportunity for Alex Martinez and he didn't sell it, right? As to where there were no opportunities here, for Morgan or Riley for Duckless, and they didn't sell it because they didn't have an opportunity. And so that's the difference between being able to use slicers is you can easily get very, very granular. And that's what you want. Because like if you get super granular, you're going to see that, you didn't have that many opportunities except for full system. But even then, there was no opportunities for Morgan in full system, standard equipment tier, West Territory, Google, pay-per-click, right? So you can get extremely, extremely granular this way. And so, yeah, that's essentially how you can create all this stuff. You can create pivot tables. You can create, let me make this a little bit wider, and this too, because the dollar value. Okay. So here we learned, how to filter on month, how to write the formula to get the month, how to write the formula to get the year, how to combine those two, how to get jobs sold, how to get the average, job value, how to create a chart with a combo chart with a secondary axis, how to create 2 different pivot tables, one to count opportunities, one to count, take the average of deals closed, create a pivot chart, create slicers. So in 19 minutes, we covered a lot of ground. And so if you want this file, there's a link to download. If you can't find it, shoot me an email, questions@databoards.io. And also, if you need some help, structuring your data, because this data set here, there's a link to download it if you want it. But you can do a lot of stuff with this. And so you should be able to, recreate this or get something like this from Service Titan or from whatever software you're using. You just have to be able to create custom fields and make sure your team is entering in, all the data. Because once you become data forward, a data forward organization, you'll be able to really get insights and make decisions without sort of just, guessing. And so, yeah, and if you need help creating a data set like this, or creating any of these insights, if you don't have the time or the manpower, then again, shoot me an email, or there's a link in the description, to hop on a call. But yeah, anyways, that's all I got for this one, and I'll see you in future videos.